Good evening out there on Facebook land. This is Brother Michael Champion coming to you. I think I'm about 2 minutes behind schedule, but that's okay. We can get this going anyway. I just like to take a moment to welcome everybody for tuning in tonight. You know, I got my faithful uh, viewers that come out every week, and it's always a pleasure to be able to see you and listen to what or read your comments during the podcast. Tonight we're going to be taking on a subject known as the seed war. Now, this is a topic that you may or may not know much about. The doctrine behind this, most of you will be very familiar with. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is this going to be a clash between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. And we're going to trace it down through history. We're going to look at what the Bible says. This is going to be one of these broadcasts where I state pretty much entirely with the Word of God. Okay, I got two references that do not come out of the Bible, doesn't come out of the Bible, but basically, this is going to be a full scripture reference. So sometimes when you do a teaching, you really got to take in a lot of reference material. Sometimes you go into history or Jewish writings or religious texts to look at some stuff. But tonight, tonight we're going to look solely at scriptures and what the Bible has to say about this seed war. Now, as I've already mentioned, this seed war deals with the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. Now, what I want to do, I want us to go ahead and take a look at where we first find this seed war, where it takes place, and that's in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. Genesis is the beginning of everything, and so now it's just going to be the beginning of this seed war, this conflict that we have here. Genesis chapter 3. Look at this. This basically deals with the fall of mankind after Satan comes to tempt. Sorry about that. This actually deals with the time period about the fall of man. How the serpent came to Eve and tricked her. He said he was very subtle, Paul says, in his deception toward the woman. And when the woman fell, she turned to her husband who was there with her, Adam, and she turned and gave him the fruit. And he also did eat and partake of it as well. Which, by the way, I want to throw a little nugget out here. That's kind of like a contrast to Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ knew no sin, and he died with us while we were still yet sinners. I mean, that's over in Romans 5. But, the Adam, he bore the sin of his wife by partaking that sin. And this is what God had to say. I'm going to start reading Genesis 14 and see where we go with it. It says this, and the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above all every beast of the field. Upon that belly shall thou go, and the dust shall thou eat all the days of thy life. Verse 15 is the key verse. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Now, this is my 1611 King James Bible. I love it. I've used it all my life. But I know some people don't. It's hard for them to understand. So let me break this down for you. We often think that the devil started this battle by causing man to fall. I mean, there is a grounds that you could say that. But notice what God Almighty says in verse 15. He says, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman." That word "I" is referring back to God Almighty Jehovah, and he's saying that, which I believe this is Christ before he became a physical carnate. And God is sitting there declaring He's going to put this enmity, He's going to put this bitter hate, He's going to put this never-ending rage in the serpent. God's completely in control at this point. And notice what it is. He cursed the serpent to crawl on his belly, and he said that he's going to take this everlasting bitterness, this enmity, and he's going to place it between the seed of the serpent, or the offspring. And that's what seed actually means. It means the offspring of the serpent, and also the offspring of the woman. And when you hear about the seed of the woman, that's kind of like a little bit of an oxymoron, because technically and scientifically, the woman has no seed. Okay, unless the only seed she has is what she receives from her husband, and that's how she has children. But anyway, this is going to be the offspring, the offshoot, if you will, of the woman. She's going to give birth without knowing a man. And this is where we come to the virgin birth. This is the first place in the Bible where we have the virgin birth. Okay? And God tells us that the serpent shall bruise his heel, but the seed of the woman is going to bruise his head. This is a picture, a prophecy, where what God's saying is that one day there's going to be an offspring of a woman, and that child, that individual will defeat. He will defeat the workings of the devil. He's going to literally crush the head of the serpent. And so this is where everything kicks off. This is where it takes place. And this is what gets everything going. And notice that even though the serpent attacked man first, he attacked man, God's the one that said, okay, it's on now. Okay, the war is on. I am declaring war on you. And I think sometimes, you know, I don't know why God's brought me here, but I'll go ahead and show you. You know, sometimes we hear about war in the military, war, our country going through war, or wars going somewhere else, and we think that the first one to launch a violent attack, then they're the ones that started it, but not necessarily. You know, sometimes, you know, you can do something that is going to, the only way out of that is a war situation, and that's exactly what we have here, where Satan tripped up Adam and Eve. He caused them to sin, and that's a whole other story on why he wanted to do that to begin with. People say it's all about worship. I think it goes far more in depth than that, and we'll take some time in a future podcast if the Lord allows, and I'll explain why I believe that he wanted to destroy the seed of the woman. But anyway, this is where we springboard. This is where we get into it. Now, what I want to do is I want to take us to the next place that the seed of the woman is found, and that's in Genesis chapter 4. Genesis chapter 4. I'm going to read the first 11 verses, and this again, this actually shows how the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent kicks in. One more time. Get my glasses here and flip over a few pages. The seed of the woman. And Genesis chapter 4, verse 1 to 11 says this. And Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she bare his brother Abel. She again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was the keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. Verse 3. And in the process of time, let me pause right there. I have a Young's Literal Translation of the Bible, which is very specific, very detailed on what this phrase "and in the process of time" means. And it actually means at the end of days. So what's going on at the beginning of time with the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman clashing will also reoccur. Much Jewish theology points this, that this is going to be exactly what happens in the last of days. You will have the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman clashing in the last days, and we will be covering that here in a few minutes. Okay, hey Vicky, hey Sharon, it's good to have y'all here. Good to have y'all here. Okay, now let's get my glasses back on. Okay, continuing on, verse 3. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought from the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord, and Abel also brought of the firstlings of his flock and the fat thereof, and the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had no respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? Or why are you upset? And what is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shall you not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire. So right now we have God warning Cain about his temperaments, and you need to be careful, because sin is ready to jump on you. Sin is ready to take seize of you, to take control of you, to take charge of your life. And he's warning Cain about this. So notice, and most of us know the story of what's getting ready to happen, and God is warning Cain. God is preparing Cain to avoid a very dangerous, fatal temptation that the devil, Satan's going to be bringing to him here in a minute. And it continues to verse 8 says, And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against his brother and slew him. And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is thy brother Abel? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And so here's God coming to us and say, hey, what's going on here? Abel's missing. Have you seen him? And Cain's like, hey, don't come look at me, man. He's not my responsibility. We do that a lot in the church. And we don't want to help out people. We don't want to, if they're down, we always quote this, he's not my brother's keeper, or we try to push people around, and we shouldn't do that. We actually quote this, not realizing that we're quoting a murder here. Verse 10, and he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. Now art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. And verse 12, we'll close out with this, says, when thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. As a fugitive and as a vagabond shall thou be in the earth. So what we have here, we have what we could arguably say is the first murder. Technically, it was the second murder because the Bible tells us that the devil is a murderer, and he's been that way since the very beginning of time. So he's the first murderer, and he was the spiritual driving force on why Cain went and wanted to murder his own brother. So that's what we got here so far. So we see where Satan rose up, and through temptation, where through temptation he actually put a blood curse on all of humanity. And then when Cain and Abel were born, not far after that, it was a few decades, a few years later, what happened is that Cain and Abel rose up and they had their conflict, and Cain killed his brother. Remember, the devil knows that there's going to be a male child that's going to be born one day. Okay, there's going to be a child, and he's going to spell the sudden defeat for Satan and his kingdom. So Satan is always going to be a little bit paranoid when a child is born. But we're going to see how that changes in about 4,000 years as we continue with this study. Now, the next place that we have, let me get me something to drink here. The next place that we have, where we have Satan trying to thwart the plan of God, shows up in Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1, 2, and I'm going to read to you verses 1, 2, 4, 11, and 13. And here's what it says. And it came to pass, notice how many times we've read this over a short period of time. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, we looked at this a few weeks ago, this phrase, sons of God, actually refers to angels. And the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, of which they chose, verse 4, there were giants of the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came to the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them, and the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Verse 11 says, the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence, and God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. What we have here is the third place we find the conflict of the ages going on. And I know if you keep a score here, I know it's going to look like the devil is winning, but don't worry, God's only did we got here, they can be 3 days late and still be on time. You know what I'm saying? Amen. Okay, so what happened is Satan tempted the angels. Revelation chapter 12 tells us that a third of the angels Satan drew a third of the angels with his tail in the midst of his fall. And what we have here, we have Satan seducing the angels to where they would cross over and not do what they're supposed to be doing, and interbreed with humans, and more specifically the daughters. And what happened? It created these hybrid creatures, these giants. The word in Hebrew is Nephilim. We looked at this a few weeks ago when we talked about the offspring of these angelic beings and mortal women, and he wanted to destroy the entire bloodline of mankind. And I'll back up I'll back up a few verses, and look what it says. Verse 9 in chapter 6 says, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in all his generations, and Noah walked with God. Now, what does that word perfect mean? Does that mean he didn't do anything wrong? Hardly. Noah was just as human as the next guy. As a matter of fact, he actually got drunk later in Genesis chapter 9, I believe it was. What he's telling us is that the serpent tried to corrupt the entire line of all mankind to where there was no way that a Messiah could come. If he corrupted everybody, as we just read in Genesis, basically the entire world was corrupt at this point, and only Noah and his family were the ones that were spared from this corruption because Noah feared God. That's a good question to have. Do you fear God right now? Do you have a fear of God? It's not, loving God is not just the easy way to, loving God's the book answer. Yeah, I love God. But the question is, do you fear God? Are you going to do what he says? And this is exactly what Noah did. He was a man of faith, but he also feared God. And that's what allowed him to find grace in the eyes of God. And this is what allowed him to be the next covenant man actually, he was probably the first covenant man in the Bible as son of Adam. And this is what we have here, where we have Satan again trying to corrupt and destroy these the bloodline, so that there will be no Messiah born. See, here's the thing about it: the Messiah, according to the Book of Ruth, the pictures and the story we have there, the Messiah had to be a kinsman redeemer. He had to be related to mankind. And if you have these hybrid creatures that are part angel, part earth, part human, then that's not a pure race. And I'm not saying that there's one race better than the others. I'm talking about this is not a pure genetic creation of God. And so the Messiah, he would not be necessarily related to. He wouldn't be full-blooded related to mankind, and that was so important that he became man, because he was supposed to be related to humanity. That way, he could save humanity do the role of the kinsman redeemer. He could avenge for the death of a wrongful death of his family. That would be us. So notice that. Now, what happens next? The next place that we find this seed of the war is in Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12. Let's go and find that real quick. Genesis chapter 12. I'm going to start in verse 10 and look at this. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went out down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto his wife Sarah, Behold, now I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, and they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill thee, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, that thou art my sister, that I mayest be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. Verse 14, and it came to pass, and when Abram was coming to Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, speaking of Sarah, that she was very fair. So Sarah was a very beautiful woman, very beautiful. And the princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh. The woman was taken into Pharaoh's house, and he entreated Abram well for her sake. And then he had sheep and oxen and asses and men servants and maid servants, and the asses and camels. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with a great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called unto Abram and said, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou tell me that she was thy wife? Why sayest thou, She is my sister, so I might have taken her to me to wife? And now therefore, behold, thy wife, take her and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning them, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. Okay, there's several things in this verse. There's two main things I want to point out here real quick. Notice there was a famine. It was so grievous in the land. I believe this was a satanic attack. I believe this was where Satan was trying to attack and take down take down Abraham to where he would starve to death. This was a clear attack on the seed of Abraham, through the seed of man through Abraham. And Abraham will be probably your second contact, your second covenant man. And what happened when he got down into Egypt? He had this great plan, all figured out what we'll do. We'll just say that we're brother and sister, and that'll be fine. And of course, later in the book of Genesis, we find out that they had the same father but different mothers. So Sarah was actually his half-sister, so he wasn't really lying. He just wasn't telling the truth either. And so what we have here, we have the Pharaoh. What did he do? He took Sarah for his own. He took her as to put in his harem, and one day he might even marry her. And how will that mess things up? See, Sarah was also a covenant woman, or she will be soon. And you didn't want to have another man lie with Sarah and produce another lineage, because that's going to be a whole other can of worms here in a few minutes when we look at that with Ishmael and Isaac. What's going on? If Sarah would have had any other children, then it could have caused trouble as far as the identity of who the land of Israel belongs to. So just make note of that, and just remember that God is still working, trying to get through this plan of preserving his people. Excuse me. And this is another thing I like. We get to see where God is working throughout the generations. He's raising up covenant men, and he's standing firm on this. And he's trying to bring everything through a preserved blood lineage. It's not a preferred race. It's not a preferred ethnicity or religious belief. It is a pure link. And I'm not saying that other men and women in a peripheral line, they were corrupt. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he had a direct lineage from Adam to Jesus Christ that was a pure line, and how the devil tried to attack people on that genealogical line, going all the way down to Jesus Christ, because he was trying to corrupt, like I said, the birth of the Messiah that would one day spell the end of Satan. And of course, as we know, that didn't work, did it? Satan's kingdom's coming down. Amen. God's taking care of it, taking them out. So let's continue to take a look at what next. And when we go to Genesis chapter 16, 1 to 14, this is the next place where we find the seed war is actually where we are, 16. Excuse me. This is where we have Ishmael being born. Okay. Now Sarah, Abram's wife, she bare no children, and she had a handmaid in Egypt who's an Egyptian whose name was Hagar. And by the way, Hagar was the king of Egypt, not the Pharaoh, but the king of Egypt's daughter through a concubine. Okay, that's what history teaches. And Sarah said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord restraineth me from bearing, and I pray thee go unto my handmaid, and it may be that I may obtain children to her. And Abram hearkened to his voice of Sarah, and Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her handmaid, the Egyptian, and after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and he gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, and he went to Hagar and conceived. And when he saw that she had conceived, her mistress had despised in her eyes. And that, of course, we're talking about how Sarah's attitude began to turn from Hagar, from one of love to one of being despising her. But Abraham said unto Sarah, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand, do to her as it pleases thee. And when Sarah dealt hardly with her, she left and fled from the face. And the angel of the Lord found her by the fountain of the water, in the wilderness by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, whence comest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, and it shall not be numbered for the multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard her affliction. Now, this is the first stage that we have here. A child was supposed to be born from Abraham. It was supposed to be his seed that was going to continue the lineage to the Messiah. And Sarah, she couldn't have children, so she said, I want you to go in. I want you to take my handmaiden Hagar, and I want you to have children with her. And Abraham went along with that idea. And this produced a side heir, if you will. This produced another person that would be battling for this covenant later as we get into this. And when we get into we see that later Ishmael and Isaac would have problems. Isaac was just a small child. Ishmael was about, I'm going to say, probably close to about 13, 14 years old. And they began to have conflict and fight. And Hagar, her attitude changed towards Sarah. Sarah's attitude changed toward Hagar. Ishmael was growing up. Abraham was being a good father to him, taking him, teaching him the work of the bow and so forth. He wanted him to be a good hunter. And what we have to realize is that at a certain point, Ishmael began to get a big head on him, so did Hagar, and it actually led to Hagar and Ishmael being sent away, and Hagar was afraid that her son would die, and she asked the Lord to let him die away from her because she didn't want to see the death of her son. And eventually that's what happened is the Lord appeared to her one more time, and he gave us great prophecy about what Ishmael would be. Matter of fact, let's take a look at that prophecy real quick. I'm going to go to 21. And we're going to read a little bit about this prophecy. 21, starting 1 to 14, so we'll get all this together. I believe this is the text where Ishmael sent away. Let me see if I can't find it real quick. Well, I thought I had it. I thought I had those notes written down. Hang on 1 minute. Okay, actually, it was this prophecy was actually given back in Genesis chapter 16. Chapter 21 is when they ran away, and they didn't come back. But the angel of the Lord said he had heard the affliction. He said, "I want you to name that child Ishmael." And here's the prophecy that went with him: "And he will be a wild man; his hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And all his brethren shall dwell in his presence, and he shall be called." And she called the name of the Lord what she called? She called the name of the Lord that spake to her. Thou God seest me, and for he said, have I also looked after him that seeth me, where the well was called Bir Laharoi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered, and that's what we have there, where Ishmael and Hagar were being born, and that was the prophecy about where he'd be like a wild ass of a man. He would always be against people, and so that's what we have. And this continues. This continues the battle of the seed and the battle of the woman. Okay. So what happens next? Well, I didn't have this on my notes, but I do want to briefly share this with you. This is Genesis chapter 22. This wasn't really an attack, if you will, but this was a test for Abraham to bring out his character. When you go to Genesis chapter 22, this is the substitute sacrifice where God took Isaac to Mount Moriah as a sacrifice, because God had asked him to sacrifice his only son, which would be his only son of the covenant, which would have been Isaac. And they were tested there to see what the resolve was, to see what would happen if Abraham would back out or not. And Abraham did not back out. He was going to sacrifice his son because he knew that if he sacrificed his son, that God would have to resurrect him back up, so he could fulfill that prophecy, that prophecy, and that promise. So this next takes us to a famine, another famine. There's a lot of famines in the land back in these days. Go to chapter 26, okay? And this is something in Genesis chapter 26 that we have. Find my place real quick. Chapter 26, and look at what we have here. Chapter 26, I'm going to start reading verse 1. And there was a famine in the land outside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, go not down to Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and I will bless thee, for unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform an oath which I swear by unto Abraham thy father, and I will make thee seed multiply, get this, as the stars of heaven, and as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and unto thy seed shall be all the nations shall be blessed, and because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge and commanded my statutes and laws, and Isaac dwelt in Gerar. Now, the reason why God didn't want Abraham, the reason why he didn't want Isaac going down into Egypt is because prophetically it was not time to start fulfilling these things. So he sent him down to Gerar, which is, if I remember correctly, this is down around the place of the Philistines, not far from where this would have been. And Abimelech, who probably, this is a title of his, Abimelech, he was a king of Gerar, and he went and he stayed down there with him. And notice that the reason why God was preserving Abraham, or why he's preserving Isaac, excuse me, was not because Isaac was something special, but because Abraham was faithful to him in the covenant. And we will see that Isaac will also be faithful in the covenant. And when he has two sons, Jacob and Esau, which is where we're getting ready to go, then that's exactly how God will be blessing and preserving the line through Jacob's lineage. Now, this takes us to Jacob and Esau in Genesis chapter 25. I want to share something with you. Genesis chapter 25. This is 23 and 24. Did I get that right? 25. This is chapter 23 and 24. And what we have here, starting in verse 23, it says, and the Lord said to her, two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separated from the angels from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elders shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered was full, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out, all over was like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that, his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when they bare him. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter. That actually means an expert hunter, man of the field. And Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, and Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob saw pottage, and Esau came into the field, and he was faint. And Esau said unto Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with the same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die. What profit shall this birthright be to me? And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright and Jacob unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave unto Esau the bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Now, what you have to realize is this was the beginning of the fight and the struggle between Esau and Isaac when they began to, excuse me, I'm always getting these three men, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, mixed up, so y'all bear with me. This is the beginning of the fight, struggle between Jacob and Esau. Eventually, Esau sets out to try to kill Jacob, to take him out, and he wants to take out Jacob, but he doesn't do it. And this battle basically raged on from, they were only about 16 years old when this whole incident with the purge took place. And this struggle began to take place at an early age for them, and they were up in their 90s, and they were still fighting over this thing. So we see the struggle of Jacob and Esau fighting, and how this conflict would go, and how they would actually continue struggling, and they never really made peace. As a matter of fact, according to the book of Jasher, when Jacob had actually died down in the land of Egypt after living there for 17 years, they led a whole caravan up to what would soon be known as the Promised Land, the land of Israel, to bury their father, and Esau met them halfway, and a great war broke out, and Esau unfortunately was killed in the process of it. But anyway, this is another struggle that we have, the struggle of the seed going on, where we have this. And then we come to Jacob's famine, which he actually moves his family down into Egypt in chapter 46 and 47. That's where you get the list of the 70 Hebrew men in chapter 46. Now it kind of correlates, it matches up with the 70 Gentile men that's mentioned in Genesis chapter, Genesis chapter 10, I believe that's where we found those people. Now, when we get to the time of the Exodus, or around the time of the Exodus, that's when Pharaoh rises up. Now, I want to share we added the book of Exodus real quick, where we are. Exodus chapter 1, 7 to 11. Let's take a look there. Exodus chapter 1, 7 through 11 says this. I'm going to start reading verse 6. That'll be easier because all it is just list names before that. Verse 6 says, And Joseph died, and all his brethren that were, and all that generation, and the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. And now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph, and said unto his people, Behold, the people are the children of Israel, and are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal with them wisely, with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out in the war, they join also unto our enemies. They join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up and out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities of Pithom and Ramesses. Now, this is exactly what we have where Pharaoh rises up against the children of Israel, and he actually begins to enslave them, ensnare them, and put them in chains of bondage, and begin to heavily afflict them bitterly. And this is going to lead up to the time of the Exodus. And notice that there was a Pharaoh that rose up that did not know Joseph. This is, I believe, is why it's very important that we maintain political leaders in government that actually that are Christian, because they will be able to better guide the country, and they're not going, and they'll be the least likely to persecute the believers. But this wasn't the case in Egypt. Egypt had a Pharaoh that he rose up. He did not know he didn't have a connection with Joseph. He didn't know him. This would have probably been the the grandson of the Pharaoh that Jacob came down under. So this is something that we have to that when we see this, that they're getting ready to go under bondage, and this is another attack of the enemy to try to slaughter them or cut them off and take away the put an end to the war, if you will. That's what I'm trying to say. Put an end to the war. The seed of the serpent, the seed of the woman, that they would ultimately be defeated and crushed, and there would be no Messiah to come to defeat the Savior. See, here's the thing about Satan. Satan does not want to be defeated. He doesn't know. And we're going to look at some things at the time of Christ here in a few minutes that's going to show that Satan already knows he's been defeated and there's nothing he can do. The battle is over and it's been done away with. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Now, when we come to the wilderness wanderings, check this out. The wilderness wanderings, there was a man by the name of Balaam. This was Balaam II. His grandfather was Balaam I that actually contended with Moses, with Jannes and Jambres, and that's mentioned in, I believe it's like 2 Timothy 3. I believe that's where it's found. It's either 2 Timothy or 1 Timothy chapter 3. I think it's 2 Timothy chapter 3. And that's where we have this line, lineage where the Balaam II, he was like I said, he was the grandson of the first Balaam. And what did he do? In Numbers 22, 1-20, Balaam actually conspired with Barak, the king, and said, what you need to do, you can't curse Israel because they've been blessed. You can't curse what God's been blessed. Ain't that, that's a good thing, ain't it? If you're blessed by God, you can't be cursed. So that's some comfort right there. But he did say to the king, Balaam said, well, here's what you can do. We can't do anything to Israel because they're highly favored and blessed, but we can get Israel to fall away from God, and that will bring a judgment upon themselves. God will deal with his people that way. And Revelation, I think it's it's in chapter 2 and 3 where you're dealing with the seven churches of Asia. But one of them actually, that the sin was that they were following in the footsteps of Balaam, because they actually began to cast stumbling blocks toward God's people. And this is just it's a mild form of it, but it's just another way of the attack on the seed of the woman to try to wipe them out. And this leads us to, I didn't write that down, but it's in Numbers. Let me give you the right reference to that. Numbers, I'll make sure I get that. Numbers, it's after 22. Numbers 22, 26. Let's see, where am I? That's 25. Numbers 25. That's when we have the seed of that's when we have the seed. That's when the Moabite women come in and they try to seduce the men of Israel and go into sexual sin. And God had to come down and put an end to it. There was actually a disease that broke out at this time. And they had to kill out, destroy the pestilence and put an end to it. And when the last of the Moabite women and the last of the men had actually been killed that were fornicating and committing adultery, when they were put down, then the pestilence was cut off and it actually stopped. Now, this gets us to a whole new ball game. A whole new ball game. If you will, I want to read something to you, a prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 22. We're going to move into the time of the kings. Jeremiah 22. Jeremiah 22. Jeremiah 22. Look at what we're going to find here. Well, I'm going to read to you about Jeconiah, who, by the way, was probably the most wicked king ever. And people say, well, what about Manasseh or Ahab? Well, listen to what God says through the prophet Jeremiah to Jeconiah in verse 22, verse 30. Thus saith the Lord, write ye this man, speaking of Jeconiah, childless, a man that shall not prosper in his days, for no man, excuse me, for no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting on the throne of David and ruling any more in Judea. Wow. But I thought the Davidic line was supposed to bring forth the Messiah. Of course it was. But we're looking at the direct lineage of Messiah leading up to Joseph and Mary and the birth of the Messiah. And what did God say? This guy's so wicked, cut him off. No more of the children from his line will sit on the throne of David. Well, my question is, how does that work? How do you get past that? God has cursed the bloodline that he originally blessed and promised that would be the Messiah. So how do you get around that? It's very simple. See, both Mary and Joseph were descendants of David, and what we have is that the birthright didn't come from the mother, it came from the father, and when Jesus was born, through the virgin birth of Mary, then Joseph adopted him as his own son, and he was now entitled to all the legal benefits that his other sons would not have. So that's very important to realize. The virgin birth comes to the rescue here with this, and that's a great little story that we have. Now, the next place that we have, brings us to the exile, if you will, the exile in Babylon captivity. And when Persia comes to power, There's a whole story about Mordecai and Esther and a guy by the name of Haman, who was an Agathite. And his story actually begins about 500 years prior to this, in the days of Samuel, when when God had wanted them to the Israelites to kill King Agatha and and all his people, the animals and everything, but King Saul didn't do that, and it's believed that biblically you can find evidence to this, that what happened is that someone had actually escaped that was a descendant of King Agath, and that's exactly what we have here with Haman. And Haman rose to a special position in the Persian Empire, and he didn't like the Hebrew people. He didn't like them. It's probably been a family tradition, if you would, to hate the Hebrew people at this time for several generations. And what happened? Haman, we get this right. Haman developed a plot as soon as he got in a high enough status that all the Hebrew people were to be killed. And eventually, when Esther found out about this through her uncle Mordecai, then she was able to intercede for her people to King Xerxes. And in chapter 7 of Esther, we find out that not only was an edict where people would go and take and even kill the Jews, the king could not go back on his word, because that his word was law, if you will. So what he did do, he actually issued another edict that the Hebrew people could defend themselves. And not only was there not much of a fight going on at that time, but Haman had erected some gallows that he wanted Mordecai hung on. But as it turned out, Haman actually got hung on those gallows with all of his sons and got wiped out. So that's just another example of a story in the Bible where God is actually preserving his people. So that's another great little story we had there. Now what I want to do is I want to share some things from the life of Christ. When we talk about a seed war, we think it's all over, don't we? By the time you get to the time of Christ, but that's not necessarily the case. In Matthew 2:16, let's read that verse. We hadn't read a verse here in a few minutes. Let's go ahead and take a look at Matthew 2:16. Look at what it says. Matthew 2:16. It says, now basically Herod had dealt with the wise men. He said, I want you to go find this baby king and then come back to me and tell me who he is. That way I can worship him. Well, let me tell you, you don't want his kind of worship, do you? And chapter 2 of Matthew, verse 16 says this, Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, he was exceedingly wroth, and sent forth and slew the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof from the age 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently required of the wise men. So the wise men, they were warned not to go back and tell Herod, so they didn't. And what Herod did in his response, he wanted to wipe out all the children. You know, basically, if you kill enough people, then you get the right one, is what Pharaoh was thinking about. And that's exactly what God didn't want to happen. So this was another example of what we have here, where we got everybody trying to kill the children of Bethlehem, and it didn't work. And then when you get to Matthew chapter 4, let's go ahead and read that a little bit, and let's just check out the temptations of God. 1 through 11. Matthew 4, 1 through 11 says this, and when Jesus then Jesus was led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil, and he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights. He was afterward hungry, and when the tempter came to him and said, If thou be the Son of God, command these stones to be made into bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And the devil taketh him up into the city, and set him on the pinnacle of the temple, and said unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, from lest at any time thou dash their foot upon the stone. Verse 7, and Jesus said unto him, It is written again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord your God. Verse 8, again the devil taking him up to an exceedingly high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them. And he said unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said, Get thee hence, Satan, For it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shall thou serve, and the devil leave him. And behold, his angels came and ministered unto him. All right, what qualifies this to be an attack of the seed? It's very simple. Satan was trying to get Jesus the Messiah to follow him and worship him. If Christ would have advocated his position, if he would have given that up, and if he would have bowed down to worship Satan, then he would have fallen to temptation. He would have been a sinful creature, and he would have not been able to qualify to be our kinsman redeemer to actually save all of mankind. So that's what was going on here. Now, this is another one of my favorites. I want to share this with you. Get this. We're going to go to the storm on the sea, Matthew chapter 8. And listen to what it says here. There's a few verses here, so I want to take a look at them. I want to read them and see what we got going on here. Matthew 8, verse 23 to 27, I believe it is. And here's what we got. And when he was entered into the ship, his disciples followed him, and behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, insomuch that the ship was covered with the waves, but he was asleep. I want to stop right there. This word tempest actually means, in Greek it's seismos. It's where we get the word seismic or seismic activity. This was an earthquake, if you will, at sea. It would probably produce some small tsunamis. I mean, I don't think it was a 200-foot tsunami. Okay, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But this was something that they weren't used to, and this was an unnatural, if I can word that way, an unnatural event. But where was Jesus? Jesus, being confident of who he was and being confident of his position in the kingdom, he was asleep. It didn't faze him. And when the people called out to him, listen to what he says, verse 25. And his disciples came unto him and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish. And he saith unto them, Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. But the men marveled, saying, What manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? I believe this was an attack to drown Jesus. I believe this came from Satan himself. So we see, again, this never-ending battle that's continually going and struggling. And we have to be we have to be mindful of what's going on. The devil actually came against Jesus to get him to advocate or to walk away from his destiny, what he was doing. And notice, first of all, when we had just the seed of the woman, we're just dealing with that in the garden, then Satan was after everybody. Then we found out that it was going to come through Abel, then he killed Abel. Then Seth rose up, and he produced a lineage that would come to Noah. And then the devil brought his fallen angels to intermarry, if you will, with the mortal women, with the angels. And that corrupted everything, except for Noah. And then you come to the other side of the flood, and you have Abraham was attacked with a famine. You have Isaac attacked with a famine. You have Jacob attacked with a famine. Then you have those dueling brothers again with Isaac and Ishmael, and Jacob and Esau. Okay, even Esau went as far as wanted to try to kill his brother, and that's why he had to leave and go to his uncle Laban's house, his mother's brother, Rebekah. So that's what we have. Then we see that they're dwelling safely and comfortably. So that's the big thing. You can't get to the point where you're dwelling comfortably in a place where you don't need to be. And God wanted to bring them out, and He wanted to bring them to a place that they were supposed to be, so He could raise up people. He could raise up a culture. He could raise up certain laws that would vindicate mankind through salvation, and He wanted to have a place for His temple to be built, so that He would come as the form of a man one day and dwell and live in that situation. And what happened? That they were complacent, and so what they do, God sent judgment to bring them out of it. He brought judgment to Egypt, but He brought them out of the land of Egypt through miracles. And I love it because the entire time they were always murmuring and arguing. And I got a friend, she often says something along the lines of, don't go back to where God is rescued from. And certainly this is exactly what the Israelites were wanting to do. They wanted to go back where God was bringing them out of the idolatry and the uncleanness and the spiritual idolatry to it, and he brought them out of that. And that's something very important that we have. So we'll do that. And then when it got mentioned it's going to be David's bloodline, then there was all kinds of problems with David and his bloodline that was going on. And then when we found out that it was Christ, Satan rose up against Christ. I want to read something to you about the crucifixion. Luke chapter 23. Let's go to Luke chapter 23 real quick. Luke 23. And this is what happens at the crucifixion. Let's take a look at this. Luke 23. Luke 23. Oh, I went too far. Luke, Luke 23. Well, where is it? There it is. Luke 23, and I'm going to start reading in verse 32 to 43. And listen to this. And there were also two other, this dealing with the crucifixion, and there were two other malefactors led with him to be put to death. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him, and they made and the malefactors on one side of the hand and on the other to the left. And then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots. And the people stood beholding, and the rulers also with them derided him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he be Christ, the chosen of God. And the soldiers also came and mocked him, coming to him and offered him vinegar, and saying, If thou be the King of the Jews, save thyself. And an inscription also was written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew, This is the King of the Jews. And one of the malefactors was hanging there, railed upon him, saying, If thou be Christ, save thyself and us. And the other answered, saying, rebuked him, saying, Does not thou fear God, seeing that thou art the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man has done nothing amiss. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. And it goes on and talks about the death of Jesus Christ. I noticed that even when Jesus was hanging on the cross, what was going on? He was still being tempted to walk away and to thwart the plan of God, his Father. And he said no, he rejected that. Remember when he was prophesying, saying that he would have to die for the sins of the world, and Peter jumped to the hand and said, no, we can't have that. And what did Jesus say? Get thee behind me, Satan. See, the devil did not want Jesus to die because he knew one thing. If Jesus really was God in the flesh, if he knew no sin, then when he physically died, he would come back. Death can't hold you in the ground. You think, now get a little of that. Get that revelation. Death cannot hold you in the ground if you are truly saved, if you have that perfect spirit that God has made you whole, made you perfect. So that's exactly what the devil was trying to come against and affect and take him down with it. Now look at this. Let's talk about a struggle in history, prophetically speaking. What's going to be going on? John 8:44, Jesus condemns the religious leaders, saying that they are children of the devil. Of course, these are spiritual children. Okay? Spiritual children. Matthew 20, I want to read it now. I want to share something about this prophetically also. What about this, the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman? In previous podcasts, I shared with you about this. How if one seed is natural, the other seed is going to be natural. If one seed is spiritual, the other seed is going to be spiritual. And I believe there'll be a natural seed and a spiritual seed of the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. For example, Jesus is the natural seed of the woman, but we as followers, I believe, are the spiritual seed of that one. We're the spiritual side of it. Well, John 8:44 says that people who follow Satan are they're spiritual seed of Satan. Then what about the natural seed of the serpent? Now, go with me to Matthew chapter 13. Let's go back to Matthew. Matthew 13. Okay, what verse am I starting in? Matthew 13. Starting in verse 24, it says this. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like unto a man which sowed good seed from his field. But while the man slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and he went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also, and the servants of the household came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in the field? And whence from then hath it tares? And he said unto them, An enemy hath done this. And the servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? And he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Verse 30, both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say unto the reapers, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them together in bundles, and burn them, and gather the wheat into my barn. See, you have to understand about wheat and tares. You have wheat, which is it's a good fruit, if you will, and then the tares is a very defective. It's not a good form of the wheat. It's very badly deteriorated, and it's not good for anything. And if we have that the wheat and the tares, the wheat actually is the good seed that Jesus sowed and bring back the souls, and the tares are those of the corrupt one. Now, I want us to look prophetically. Could we have a corruption of the seed of man again? Well, Daniel 2:43 seems to imply this. Listen to this. Daniel 2:43. Daniel 2:43. I've shared this with people before, but this goes back to a corruption of the seed of the serpent that's going to be coming out. That's going to be coming out later. Daniel 2:43. Daniel 2:43, and it says this. This is in reference to the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw and Daniel's interpreted for him. And when you get down to 2:40, when you get down to verse 43, it says this: And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with miry clay. So there's going to come a day in the future in which something that's not human is going to try to mingle itself with the seed of men, but it's not going to click. It's not going to have there. So we see that this mingling of the seed, this mingling of the genetics of the offspring, it's going to repeat. It's going to come back again. Now think about this. If this is true, then we can see some really strange and bizarre stuff coming in the days ahead, and especially after the rapture of the church, we're really going to see some strange and bizarre things. Now, if you go into Revelation 16, chapter 1 and 2, you'll find that those who take the mark of the beast, or those of the world who swear allegiance to the Antichrist, they're going to have noisome sores all over their body. So this is another reference that I see in Daniel 2:43, where the genetics are not going to click, they're not going to mesh the way they need to, and they're going to have a complete breakdown. Now, in our final hours, final minutes actually, wow, we're almost done. I got one more section I want to share with you. I want to talk about the Antichrist and the next Holocaust. Let's go to Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12. Revelation 12. Whoops. Revelation chapter 12. And listen to the text here. This text starts talking about Jesus as a child, but then it's going to go to talking about the nation of Israel. I'm going to start in verse 1. And this is what it says. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travaileth in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew a third part of the stars, and did cast unto the earth. And the dragon stood before the women, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour the child as soon as it was born. Verse 5, and she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Verse 6, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared for her, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Now think about that. That last verse I read from verse 6, that's actually where the Jewish nation of Israel, they began to flee to the wilderness. I bet it's going to be around the area of Petra, which is in southern Jordan, or in that area, or southern Edom. And what we have here, we have the serpent in the latter days of the tribulation coming up against trying to destroy and bring a slaughter of the Jewish people again. And that's exactly what we have in the last days. He's not done with us yet. And this is one reason why I believe that God's going to bring the rapture of the church before the tribulation, because the Bible tells us that this is going to be a time of Jacob's troubles. Jacob had another name. That name was Israel. And this woman is the church didn't bring forth the Messiah. The church brings forth the gospel of the Messiah. But it was the Hebrew people, it was the nation of Israel that brought forth the Messiah, the actual man, the Messiah himself. Now, before we close, I want to take you back one more time to Daniel. We're going to go to Daniel And I'm going to read to you from chapter 7, Daniel 7, verse 25. Daniel 7:25, and it says this. Speaking of the Antichrist, and he, the Antichrist, shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall, get this, wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change the times and the laws, and they shall be given into his hand until the time and times and dividing of times. So he's going to torment and attack and persecute the Jewish people for how long? Time, times, and half a times. And that word time is a year, times is 2 years, and half a time will be 6 months. That's 3.5 years. He's going to come after the Jewish people. He's going to attack them and try to bring them down. And this is where we're going to have our final Holocaust. So that's what we have going on here. This is the lesson I have prepared tonight. I can't see who all actually tuned in and watched it. Like I said before, on Facebook, on my phone, I could. I know we got our faithful groups out here, Shannon and Vicky, Sharon and Vicky, they tuned in tonight. That's going to be great. I'm glad to have them out here. They were the ones that I saw commenting. Thank you for supporting the ministry. And next week, I'm going to be back giving you a lesson on 7 warnings to the end time church. 7 warnings to the end time church. I'll be coming out of Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3 next week. And also, I hope you got a chance to tune into Emmanuel Baptist Church. If not, I'll go ahead and let this message. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Vicky. You have a good night, too. Next week for Emmanuel Baptist Church, I'll be recording live that day, but I want to let you know that I will be bringing the morning message. I'll be preaching that Sunday, so that's going to be an extra time for me to speak. And also, that Sunday night, I'll also be bringing the message, 7 warnings to the end time church. So there's a lot of good things happening. Stay tuned. Let me see. 11 comments, 2 viewers. Okay. Now I can't see the names, but I can see some of the stuff on there. But anyway, it was a good time tonight. I enjoyed bringing this message to you. I hope you learned something. But anyway, I'll see y'all next week. God bless. Y'all take it easy, and I'll talk to you soon.